Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today on our Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity webinar series where we're focusing in on workplace mental health. If you joined us last month, you know we have some tech problems, something going on with the live events where the link is kind of sending people to either side of the presentation. This is theoretically the back room, so we shouldn't have participants in here, so we're trying to sort that out. Hopefully everybody watching can see everything just fine. And if you were in that situation last month, I heard from some folks they couldn't see the slides. We did share that out, so you should be able to see the presentation in its normal full form with slides and everything else that are happening in there. As you all know by now, there's a Q&A box at the top of your screen. You can submit your questions there anytime throughout the presentation. We'll get to as many as we can at the end. I can tell you that we're pretty full today, so I don't know how many questions we'll get to. And then make sure you sign up for emails on our michigan.gov/workplace mental health site. That includes all the recordings, everything else that we're doing, so you'll find that there. We continue to focus in on those three pillars, being those things that are happening in the workplace, those things that are affecting the workplace, and then connections to individual behavioral health supports. We want to make sure that we hit on all of those, and what we're talking about today does that to its core. So we are definitely full steam ahead in our what can we do about it phase. We've been out there talking to a lot of folks. I shared a lot of the updates last month on how much outreach and education we've been doing, and we're going to continue to do all of that. But today we're in the second part of our three-part series, which is really focused on where we've been and where we're going. And we're going to talk about our new branding as well as our leads initiative. So as you can see from our slide deck, we're going to continue to talk about workplace mental health, but we're going to focus in on the concept of healthy work, healthy minds to show the sort of interconnection of workplace safety and health and total worker health, which includes pulling in the whole person and trying to send people home better than they came home or came to work. Definitely a shift in philosophy for a lot of places, but I think it's a great thing that's happening out there. So today, you may have seen the press news. We're going to talk about today, we are launching our LEADS pilot program. We're so excited we're at this phase. Over the last several months, behind the scenes, not seen by anybody, we had our great friends from the Corporation for the Skilled Workforce, Dr. Michelle Kaminsky from Michigan State, Dr. Michelle Keys from University of Michigan, Dr. Ashley Nixon from Willamette in Oregon, and others that were helping us develop what LEADS is. And we're going to talk about what it is as we go through today. And today, to kind of show, to talk a little bit further about what that's going to look like, I'm joined by Deneen Pillar-Jackson. She's with the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce, who have been helping us facilitate the development of the LEADS over the past several months. They're going to be facilitating the rollout of the LEADS. They have a training component that they're going to be participating with. So we are really excited about what we're talking about today. Go ahead. Where I'm going to start, though, is kind of a recap of where we've been. So for a long time now, if you've been working with us or listening to us, we've been talking about the impacts of stress. And that can be positive in some ways, but chronic toxic stress over time becomes very difficult for us. And one thing I've shared over and over again that's really interesting and helpful for us to think about is that every human being is wired to respond the same way once the stress response activates. Now, you and I might see the same thing, and maybe I have a stress response and you don't, but once that stress response activates, the same type of mechanisms are going to be at work in our brains that over the long term can start to cause real problems and challenges for us, including physical health conditions developing, mental health conditions like anxiety and depression, which are the most common outcome of chronic stress, and addiction and other challenges that are going to come to the surface for folks that are enduring that chronic stress. Part of my hesitation is we're hearing all these beeps on our end because of that link malfunction, so I apologize. But that chronic stress is really, really bad, and we need to focus on that. And then we talk about those things coming into the workplace. So next slide, please. So back to those three pillars. I talked a little bit about the stress. Anything that's causing us to have a stress response, whether it's work, whether it's life, whether it's inside work, whether it's outside life, whether it's family, friends, whatever it is, once that stress response is activated, it's causing challenges for our bodies. So we definitely, you heard me talk a bit about in the workplace. We want to talk about those things affecting the workplace. So different traumas we've experienced, the impacts of poverty, adverse childhood experiences, social pressures, work-life balance, All of those things are going to come into the workplace too. So the LEADS program is really rolling those things together. And we can't forget, of course, that connection to individual behavioral health support. Next slide. This is a kind of a newer concept, but this is the way that we're thinking about workplace safety and health and total worker health. So if you're a workplace safety and health professional, or you've been doing anything in workplace safety and health, you are very used to this concept of the hierarchy of controls. And in essence, it's kind of the way that we manage hazards in the workplace. And what you can see from the graph there, and this is common and it's been used for decades, is that the least effective way to deal with a hazard is to give that PPE. So we're so used to like hearing protection, safety glasses, hard hats, fall protection, all these kinds of things. Those are personal protective equipment or devices that are mitigating the hazard at the lowest possible level. The best thing we can do is to eliminate the hazard. So you can think of that of like, make it so we're not exposed to that chemical. Do we need to use that chemical? Kind of doing those things, substituting pieces, looking at engineering controls. So that would be ventilation, D-clamps for fall protection, all these other different things. If you roll that into the total worker health concept, it is the same basic framework. And in that framework, just focusing on the individual is the least effective way to deal with workplace mental health. We really need to think about that in a hierarchy of controls where we're trying to eliminate the causes, substitute work practices, procedures, redesign workflows, educate everybody, employees on up, and then make sure that we are providing that individual level of support as well. But we can't do one without the other. So that's the point of the slide, is to show the correlation between how we think about workplace safety and health, which we've been doing for a long, long time, in the context of thinking about total worker health. And that's what we're trying to do. Next slide. So we came up with this premise. It's called the LEADS program. So it's learn, educate, act, deploy, and study. One of the challenges on that last part on the study is that when we look at data, we have a lot of national data. It's hard to get Michigan data. So through this program, we want to start building the information that we need to make the right decisions in our workplace. With over the last several months, those experts that I talked to you about started working with us on what are the things that are in this program. So it is very linear. You start at the beginning, you look at your workplace, your benefits, your policies, your practices, your how your employees are doing, kind of what's happening in the workplace. You move into education, where you pull in what we always call intervention tools. We'll use that interchangeably because what we mean is education primarily. So pulling in those educational tools that include mental health intro, kind of basics of mental health, trauma informed workplaces, and other pieces there. You start working to change the culture of the workplace. So that's that ACT moment. And then you deploy that across the network. So you make sure everybody understands it, you make sure they believe it, you make sure they follow it, and you move forward. And on that other side, you start studying that. What happens to recruitment and retention and retention and healthcare costs, productivity, all of these other measures to see that we're having the right impact. One of the reasons that we've worked so hard to develop this is that there are a lot of great tools out there that employers can find on workplace mental health, but it's hard. So if you just kind of Google like, hey, I want to do some workplace mental health stuff, you're going to get a pile of stuff. So what we wanted to do is kind of develop something that we can study. So part of the pilot is actually studying the interventions to make sure they're working, but bring in the right tools and the right method so that we have the biggest impact that we can have and create that baseline of understanding and change in the workplace that's going to have more permanent impact as we continue to move forward. And we wanted to focus in on small employers that might not make these investments on their own. So we're spending some money from Leo to make sure that we do this. Next slide. So when we look at that, we're going to show and we're going to promote out there that we're prioritizing employers with 50 to 500 employees. We'll go smaller and we can go bigger, but we really want to be in that spot where we're working with employers that otherwise aren't in a position to kind of have this kind of focus and make these investments and bring in this kind of training. We want to make sure that we are looking at areas of the state that need the most support, and we want to go across sectors so we can quickly identify who's going to be there. We want to make sure that we're engaging employees from top to bottom. So a lot of training that we've seen out there really is, it could be leadership focused. There's not a ton that's employee focused. We wanted to make sure the LEADS program is spanning the spectrum of the organization so that we get to the everyday working folks that are on the front lines so they get the support and education understanding that they need. Next slide. And then we'll cover the roadmap. Denise's really going to get deep into kind of what this roadmap is doing. But if you think about leads, this is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to come in and help employers do that baseline. We're going to take some time to work with HR leadership on policies, practices, and benefits. We're going to jump into respectful workplaces, where we talk about how we work, kind of the impacts of workplace bullying and harassment and other things. We're going to get into that mental health essentials so we can create that baseline of understanding, awareness, and support. We're going to focus in on our brains at work, which is kind of the impacts of stress and trauma. And then we're going to assess how this goes. So we're certainly going to make that happen. And for now, I'm going to turn it over to Denise so she can walk us through how this is going to roll out and how you can potentially apply.
Thanks so much, Sean. I'm really excited to be here with you today to really share about the amazing opportunity the LEADS pilot offers to Michigan employers. So when you join the LEADS pilot, you gain access to evidence-based assessments, practical tools, and hands-on training that help strengthen workplace culture, leadership, and employee well-being. We know this is needed now more than ever. Across Michigan, stress is driving nearly 40% of turnover, and burnout is rising at alarming rates across all sectors. So with this, lower burnout, higher engagement, this job stress is really toxic. So how can employers do something different to help their employees? And that's what the LEADS program is all about. So LEADS just isn't a training program, it's a pathway of learning and action. It helps organizations build workplaces where people feel valued, respected, and able to do their best work every day. I've always believed that there's dignity in work that surpasses the paycheck. When people feel safe, supported, and the return is really real. For every dollar invested in mental health, employees see about a $4 return on investment. That's engagement, productivity, and innovation. All of the things that help companies not only survive, but thrive in this age of work that we're dealing with now. So this pilot is a chance to strengthen your people, your culture, and your long-term performance. So let's take a look at what the modules actually offer. We'll start off with our policies, practices, and benefits module. Here we focus on systems that shape the everyday experience of employees. The policies, the practices, and the benefits that either support mental health or it can make things worse. In this section, Dr. Michelle Keys works directly with HR teams to get a clear picture of what's already in place at your organizations. Together, you will look at the current benefit health-related policies that you have in place and identify where you're doing well and also where your organizations can grow. Many of us can grow. So a big part of this conversation is about understanding stigma and access. We know that some employers offer great benefits, but they're not being used, either because employees don't know they exist, they don't trust them, or they may not feel comfortable using them. As a matter of fact, when we look at EAP programs, only about 3 to 6% of employees actually use them. So that means employees aren't getting the needed services that are offered to them, and employers actually use money that's not benefiting their employees at all. It goes unused. So by the end of this module, your HR team will walk away with prioritized action steps and commitments, those plans that can help bring mental health supports that really are effective, they're visible, and they're equitable across your organization. This becomes your roadmap to strengthen mental health support at every level of your workplace. And so then we move on to our module in respectful workplaces. Who has ever here felt like you had a toxic boss or worked for toxic teams? Well, this is really prevalent across organizations. And so in this session, Dr. Michelle Kaminsky helps employees and leaders understand what respect actually looks like in practice, not just in your policies, but also how it comes to action. So this comes in many forms like mistreatment, incivility, microaggressions, bullying, abusive supervision. She is very clear about naming the impact of these behaviors on people in your teams and your organization. So we'll explore what to do when harm occurs. This includes for the person who that it's impacting, it's for those people who observe that behavior, and also for the leadership that's responsible for helping hold those people accountable. It's important for employees to feel safe and respected in their workplace. So this module on respective workplaces is to provide awareness. It's about building a culture of civility and respect where people feel honored, like they belong, and that they're valued. If we move to our next slide, it's on mental health essentials. In this section led by Dr. Michelle Keys, it focuses on helping employees and leaders recognize common mental health concerns at work, build the skills of supportive conversations, and help you to understand what resources are actually available to them. I just shared most resources aren't used by employees. So how do you have conversations where employees know where they are and they feel safe with using them? This session also covers the signs of stress, burnout, and anxiety, and depression. And the goal is to walk away knowing how to notice when yourself and a coworker is struggling. You'll have the opportunity to practice simple, practical steps for starting a supportive conversation, which is something many of us don't know how to do. But in this day where we're so polarized, these type of skills are necessary and beneficial. So this module plays a big role about reducing stigma. It helps create cultures where talking about mental health is normal, expected, and supported, not only for people to understand them, but to not be ashamed to have these discussions. It helps employees feel prepared, it helps leaders feel prepared, and gives very straightforward resources and support for organizations to respond with consistency and care. Next, we will go to our Brains at Work module. Here we talk about the science of stress, what's happening in our brains and our body, and what we can do to respond in a healthier, more supportive way for ourselves. So this session is led by me and my colleagues at the CSW. We bring together science-based and trauma-informed strategies to help participants strengthen both personal resilience, but also team resilience. As Sean stated earlier, there's real science behind how our brains work under pressure, how stress impacts our communication, our decision-making, and how we show up. It explains why people respond the way they do when they're overwhelmed and when what we often describe in our module, in your red brain. So from there, we introduce practical regulation tools you can use every day, like grounding techniques, breath work, sensory strategies, and using those small moments to settle and connect with your nervous system. These practices help us regulate ourselves in the moment, and they also support us with supporting our colleagues. This is what we call co-regulation. We want everyone to feel safe. We want everyone to feel respected and humanize the experiences that each of us have at times. We all feel overwhelmed at times. And so this helps us to show up as our best selves. And these are not just workplace tools. These are tools, and we call them resiliency tools in our module, where these things were never taught in school, but these are essential tools to help us help ourselves as we help others. I have a saying that if a flower doesn't grow, you don't blame the flower, you blame the environment that they're growing in. And that's the same when you build resiliency tools. For that, we also connect these practices that we're learning into a trauma-informed organization, one rooted in safety, one rooted in belonging, transparency, and psychological safety. So by giving employees and leaders a shared language and shared strategies, this module supports workplaces where teams can think more clearly, they can communicate more calmly, and navigate stress with greater confidence and care. This becomes the foundation of these safe, more connected, and truly resilient workplaces. Now, just let's look at the program expectations. Participating in the LEADS pilot is a shared commitment. As Sean indicated, Leo has invested bringing together a strong team of partners and trainers to support Michigan workplaces. And this pilot is offered at no cost to participating organizations. Our goal is to build mutually beneficial partnerships that strengthen your people and your culture. To get the full benefit of the program, LEADS requires active engagement from all levels of the organization. Frontline staff, HR supervisors, managers, and leadership. Resilience is not just the job of the individual, but every group plays a role in building healthier, more connected workplaces. In terms of the time commitment, the program engages you for about 6 to 14 hours of training between January and April, depending on your role. So employees typically take about 6 hours of training, while HR leaders, union partners, and leadership have about 12 to 14 hours of training. And that includes additional hours where we add action labs and other focused conversations to help consult you on how to benefit your organization. This is truly a win-win, an amazing program that Michigan is offering its employees that we don't see anywhere else across the country. So your employees gain practical skills to improve their well-being and relationships at work. And the bonus is it transfers into their personal life. So you actually help build healthier families and communities. Leaders build the capacity to support their teams, and organizations strengthen their retention, engagement, and cultures in amazing ways that can last over the long term. So it has been such a pleasure talking to you today to share more about the LEADS program. We're excited about it starting. And so I will transfer it back over to Sean so he can share how to learn more about the program and how to apply. Looking forward to meeting you.
Yeah, so we're pretty excited. I think to make it easy right out of the gate, I think we have a couple of how to apply next steps. You'll see an email come out from us with these same basic links happening there, but we have a QR code for those that want to jump in and complete the LEADS application form. And then we have a form there for people that want to request more information. And of course, our contact info at leo-laborhwhm@michigan.gov. Everybody repeat with me. HWHM stands for healthy work, healthy mind, right? So that's the way we're going to be continuing to talk about the work that we're doing. So you're going to see us transition away from saying workplace mental health to healthy work, healthy mind, because we want to make sure we understand that linkage is there. So the application form is, and the request more information form are open and available. You can kind of jump in there as soon as you're ready to do that. You'll see on the application form, it'll kind of share some of the commitment levels, and it is a lot of training, and that's intentional. We want to make sure that whatever we come in with has an impact. We want to make sure that we're getting information across the organization, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right things to improve those outcomes in our workplaces across the state of Michigan. So we got a few minutes left. I'll kind of pause here for any questions that we've received. I think Randall's going to be our moderator today, and I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much, Sean and Deneen, for the great information. We do have some great questions. So the first question is, how are the core components of the LEADS model: learn, educate, act, deploy, study, developed, and validated?
Yeah, so part of what we're doing with the pilot program is validating the learning pieces. So we're going to have assessments and some evaluations and some stuff happening through that. So I think employers that want to participate, think about this as you're really helping employers across the state of Michigan evaluate the efficacy of the tools that we think are going to work. Now, the big thing that we did was we got all the smart people, the right people that understand how these programs work, how they're effective, to help us do that. So we have psychologists, organizational psychologists, the experts at CSW on trauma and trauma-informed work that have validated research, validated methods, validated experience, and kind of bringing these interventions or trainings into workplaces to make sure that they have the impact and effect that we want them to have. So a lot of great effort went into creating those different pieces within the LEADS program. And we think we have the right partners, and we think we have the right program to do that. And you're going to help us make sure that it works.
Thank you very much, Sean. The next question is, how are small and mid-sized employers being selected or recruited for the pilot? Like, what is the capacity for employers for this pilot?
Yeah, so a big part of this pilot is research, which basically means it's going to be small. And we're not researching the employers, we're researching us to make sure that what we're doing is having the impact that we want it to have and the outcomes that we want it to have. So the pilot's only is going to be limited to about 30 or so employers. We want to make sure we focus in that small employer space. We want to make sure that we are diverse in our industries. So we want to have manufacturing, we want to have construction, we want to have healthcare, we want to have office, we want to have retail. We kind of want a wide swath of different types of employers so that it'll give us a real chance relatively quickly to learn what works in one that doesn't work in the other, or vice versa, and how we can continue to develop and modify what we think are good pieces in the workplace so that they fit every workplace across the state of Michigan. And we're going to basically sort of do that on a first come, first serve-ish basis. We do want to make sure that we have that diversity of industry. We want to make sure that we are hitting diverse areas of the state. So there will be some selection that's happening there, but it won't be in employers are making a pretty big commitment here too. So you want to be sure that you are capable of providing that type of time over the course of 3 months for employees and leadership to engage in the training pieces. And we will, make sure that we make it happen on our end, and we need you to help us make it happen so that we can ensure that Healthy Work, Healthy Mind and the LEADS program are the right tools for Michigan.
Okay. We have two other great questions, but one just came in, and this is something that you definitely covered earlier, but I'm pretty sure people would like to hear it again. Is there a cost for this program?
No. So one of the things that we've been talking with a lot of people about, both in the legislature and in state government and across the state, is that we want to think about how we have a big impact around healthy work, healthy mind across the state of Michigan, recognizing that there's a lot of employers that know they want to do this, that are trying to do this, but may not have the resources to do it. So we are trying to set up this program, and this LEADS pilot program for sure. We in LEO are paying for the training, the interventions, the assessments, the study, and all of the things that go along with it. The employer, though, is going to have to put in the commitment to allow the employees time to do the training, leadership to participate in the training, and some action labs and some other pieces there. So they do have a pretty significant commitment, but for these experts to come in and do this great stuff that we're going to do in the LEADS program, there is no cost to the employer. Thank
you, Sean. So this next question is from someone that definitely read our press release that went out early this morning. They would like to know, how does the LEADS program align with Michigan's broader economic and equity goals? Yeah, so I love that. In a lot of ways, I tell a lot of different scenarios about myself and about others when I'm doing presentations. And I had my own experience with depression, partly because of the chronic stress that I was dealing with when I was younger. And what I talk about out there is that there's a whole lot of folks that don't even know what's going on. So getting that baseline of education and understanding so that you can take the steps to help yourself. There are a whole lot of folks that don't understand by creating situations of chronic stress, we're putting people at risk. So we want to talk about and create that baseline level of support there. But the primary thing that I talk about is that we want to make sure that we recruit and retain people in our workforce. And the way that we do that is by thinking about the whole person. So depending on whether it's something that's happening in work that might push people out, about 40% of all job turnovers are related to stress, or things that people have experienced that they're bringing into work. Extensive adverse childhood experiences have a real impact on an individual's ability to move forward, and they need support to make sure that they're in a good spot to do that. So kind of putting all of that together, because you can't pay your way out of poor mental health conditions at your workplace, and there are not enough humans that exist to fill all the openings that are going to occur. So the number one way we deal with labor shortages are to not lose the people that we have. The number one way that we recruit people is to ensure that they are successful when they come into our workplace. So we can really solve a lot of the challenges in Michigan by focusing in on the whole person and making sure that we're creating more supportive workplaces. Thank you very much, Sean. So we are at time, so we're going to address one more question. And this question is, how will the findings from this pilot inform future workplace mental health policy and programming at the state level? And then the second part of this question is, will there be anything available for employers that are not included within this pilot?
Yeah, I love that. So we're going to try to validate what we're doing. If it's validated, we will continue on that path, but this is a journey, not a destination. So this Healthy Work, Healthy Mind program overall, as well as the LEADS program within that framework, are going to continue to adapt for the changing landscape and what we find out of evaluating these intervention and training models. We might see that we have to add more or less, shrink time, grow time, change some of the content. We don't know. But we're going to figure that out as we go through the pilot program. But we do recognize it's a small pilot program. So we want to make sure for employers across the state of Michigan, we're working on tools that you can start using that maybe not all the way through the LEADS program, but are available. So we will be rolling out some stuff early next year where we start thinking about how that could work. But we do have some great ideas for that. We are really beyond thrilled that we're at this stage in the LEADS program rollout where we are in that what do we do about it phase, because that's the number one thing I hear from employers and employees out there is like, I understand it now, I believe it, I get it, what do we do about it? We want to make sure that we're in that lane of trying to help people overcome these challenges in a positive way that makes the person better when they leave work than they were when they got there. So I think we can accomplish that. I'm really excited about it. And I thank you all so much for joining us today. As always, the slides and this video will be shared out in a couple of days, and we'll continue to move forward. Make sure you click on those links from the application form and the information form if you're interested. And we will see you next month.